What's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to take you through the process of how I created this poster. We're going to use 3D software called Blender, and we're going to use Photoshop. So I hope you guys are ready, and I hope you enjoy this video. Let's get started. Let's jump here into Blender. We're going to start out by creating a landscape. So go to Mesh, select Landscapes, and I just created a very quick rough landscape. I imported the Warner Brothers logo as a SVG file and just extruded the geometry. I just moved it around back into the distance. I also imported a base mesh model of a male body from CG Trader that we're going to be using to make our Superman character. Then I just proceeded to play around with the landscape settings to see if I can get something a little bit more interesting. Finally, I just threw in a really quick HDRI for some really rough lighting that I found on Polyhaven. Then I went on Google and looked for a snowy mountain image that we can throw in the background just to fill up our scene. So then we take our base model here, just go and select some of the planes here and separate them to create the suit. And then once again I'm going to go in and select pieces of the head and duplicate that mesh. That's going to be our hair, which will add a particle emitter or a hair particle system, and just make black hair, go into particle edit and just give him a nice comb over. A nice Superman comb over. Then we're going to go back to the suit here and select the bottom parts of his legs, and we're going to duplicate those. That we'll use to create the red boots. Same for the waist. We're going to just select a few planes there and duplicate them to create the belt, which is going to be yellow. Then I just used Blender Kit to really quickly and roughly add some textures to my scene. I found a really nice rubber texture that's got a lot of detail on it for the suit, and I just did that the same for the boots, the belt, and for the suit itself. Then I also found a snow texture that I quickly dropped onto my surface. Once that's done, I went to my Warner Brothers logo and selected a few planes and duplicated them. I then went and solidified them and added a subdivision surface, and then just sculpted out to make it look like snow. Also went and sculpted my surface to look like there's some deformation where the logo meets the surface, so it looks like there's snow that built up there. I added a quick denoise node to my compositing section, and then just went back in and continued to play around with the snow. At this point I was struggling a bit to get it looking realistic or smooth or nice, but I just moved on from there, and I was going to come back to that anyway. So I was playing around with the snow textures, and I was trying to decide what kind of texture I was going to make my logo. So I was playing around with a bunch of different options, and I thought it would be quite nice to have a ice texture. Seeing as though everything is snow, we can have our logo to be ice. And I just played around with that texture and the scale of the texture, and once I was happy I added a plane, and then I imported a image as plane, which is a cloud PNG image that I found online. It doesn't have a background. I then distributed those clouds onto a plane using the particle system, so it kind of spreads out clouds in the scene, which gives you a really quick volumetric effect of clouds without having to render real volumetrics, which slows down your system. I just then went and distributed that over my normal surface as well, just to put some depth into the scene. I added a light and added a little bit of a yellow color to it to balance out all the blues. Once that was done, I continued to edit my model here. I just added some armatures here and created a really quick rough skeleton, and then parented the base mesh to my armature or my skeleton. and then just played around and I was seeing if it worked well and if everything parented correctly, and then once I was happy with that, I just moved it around and then positioned it into a quick superhero like pose. Then I wasn't happy with my snow, so I deleted what I had done. Then I don't know if you guys know, but Blender has a free add-on called Snow Generator. So I used that to generate some quick snow and just modeled that, just sculpted it out a bit to look a bit more realistic, and then applied the snow texture. I unwrapped the mesh to distribute the texture evenly. Once I was happy with that, I was just playing around with different kind of angles and views and trying to decide how I was gonna set up my framing. So that took a while. Couldn't really decide at this point if I wanted to do a nice widescreen shots for computer wallpaper or if I wanted to go with a poster. Once again, I just went in and tried to neaten up the hair. From here, I added a plane and shaped it into a cape. Gave it a few quick subdivisions and then just pinned some of the vertices. Added a cloth physics simulation and pinned it so my cape doesn't blow away. Then I added a quick wind physics simulation and then ran a bunch of different simulations till I was happy with how my cape was flowing. Once I decided on if I was happy with the flow of the cape, I just baked out those physics and ended up deleting the wind physics that I added in because it kept affecting my hair particles. So every time I played around with trying to get the correct flow for the cape, it ended up messing up the guy's hair. So once I was happy with the flow of the cape, like I said, I went and baked those physics and then deleted the wind physics, and then I had to go back and fix the hair. Once that was done, I just once again try to figure out a nice position for my camera and where my character was going to sit, and just framing the composition. As you can see here, I was struggling with the hair physics, so it really took me a while to get it right. I had to keep baking my cape physics and keep just readjusting my hair. It kept on messing up my hair dynamics and things, so I had to keep going in and try and figure out why, and eventually got it right. So I just once again gave him a nice comb until it looked some sort of like Superman hair, and then finally I got it right and everything worked well. Then I looked for a nice fabric texture for my cape and added some subsurface scattering. I also gave it a quick render just to see if I was happy. At this point I couldn't decide how I wanted the lighting because everything seemed overall quite blue and cold. I also added a quick motion blur in the render tab, activated motion blur to give the cape some motion, and then I also rendered out a bunch of different passes for mist and depth so that I can use those later on in Photoshop when I'm editing. I then went and rendered out a really nice high resolution image of this render of this design at a kind of a poster size. So at this point I could see I wasn't happy with the lighting, so I added a new light behind the logo and I gave it a bit of a blue tinge. I also added some subsurface scattering to my logo so that the light would be distributed within the logo as if you were shining a light up to an ice wall. So it's just playing around with it until you get something that you're happy with. I also set the transparency to the render so that I can drop in a different background in Photoshop, and I deleted the background I was using inside of Blender. Eventually I rendered out something that I liked, so I then hopped over into Photoshop and I looked for a bunch of different backgrounds, and I just played around until I eventually found something, and I'm pretty sure I changed this at some stage. Once that was done, I just adjusted the colors of my render to match the background and gave it a nice fade so it connects nicely. I kind of deep edged my Warner Brothers logo, just the front part, so that I could adjust the brightness and contrast. Then I brought in my mist pass and just played around with the blending modes. I did the same with my shadow pass, and then I just quickly selected my character here, gave him some rim lighting, as our light would be coming from the top left side. So I just added some quick rim lighting on the hair, on the side of the arm, everywhere where the light would hit from the left hand side. I found a logo, a Superman logo or emblem online. I just quickly cut it out and set it to overlay and kind of positioned it onto the cape. Then went and looked for a different background because I still wasn't happy, and then I came across this really nice starry night snowy mountain. I dropped that in the background and this seemed to work. I then added a new layer, made it yellow, applied a mask to it, and then just kind of brushed in where the light would have a nice glow in the background and where the light would hit the top of the logo, just to kind of balance out all the blues and add some yellows in there. I then went and looked for some nice particles to simulate snow in my scene. I dropped in them at random places and I was quite happy with that. Then I added a quick vignette here very randomly, and I was liking how this was working out. I felt like it still needed a little bit of more yellow to combat all the blues, so I just played around and added some more yellow where I thought it could work nicely. I also then wanted a really high resolution render of my Superman character so that you can really see the textures on the model itself. So I went back and rendered out a really high resolution image of him, and I saved that image and dropped that back into Photoshop, and just once again positioned that over my original render and just added a mask and removed the one in the background, and that worked quite nicely. I just also added a camera raw filter to that render and just pumped up the texture and the clarity. Then made some adjustments to the logo on the cape, added some shadows, just fixed his neck. The cape wasn't sitting nicely as well, so I quickly fixed that in Photoshop just by painting in all the missing areas. Then I went and looked for another Superman logo. I thought maybe I could drop it in here somewhere. It could look nice. Wasn't too sure about that, but yeah, overall I took everything and merged it together by pressing Ctrl Shift Alt E, and then added a camera raw filter and ended up finishing it off with a nice iris blur, and then added a white frame. And when I finished, I quickly signed it, and that was it. And that's the render, guys. Thank you for watching. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this really quick tutorial on how I created this scene. You can't really say it's a tutorial, but I just wanted to show you guys how I create these kinds of renders. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing if you're not subscribed, and hit that bell notification icon for future uploads. See you soon.